Hey everybody, Pierre Quinn here, and I teach leaders how to courageously begin the journey to personal and professional transformation. And in this video, I want to talk to you about the power of commitment. So let's go. Before we jump deeper into the video, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can be one of the first to know whenever I release new content. For nearly every video, I'm wearing the same shirt. Okay, not the same shirt. I have 3 or 4 in rotation. I make sure they're washed. I actually have a whole box of them at my disposal, but those are really for you and not for me. So here's what the shirt looks like. It's a shirt that I had designed for the release of my book, Leading While Scared, How to Find the Courage to Keep Going. And I was selling the shirts on the book tour. Remember the book tour that was canceled because of COVID? I was selling the shirts on the book tour and asking people to commit to not giving up just because they were scared. And it was something that I had to embrace not too long ago. And for me, every time life gets a bit more difficult, every time things are rough, every time I feel overwhelmed, every time I feel out of sorts, I remember the things that I committed to. Well, I remember the people that I committed to. I shared in a previous video that one of the exercises that I love to do when I'm teaching teams has to do with your phone and the mission of the organization. I ask the people in the room to go through their phone and find a picture of something that they committed to taking care of. A picture of family, a picture of friends, a picture of a pet, picture of a kid that's connected to a nonprofit organization that they're supporting. And then I tell them the only way to really get people to commit to the mission of the organizations that we all work for is to support their commitment to the people who need them the most. I gave them this stark reminder that people don't go to work primarily for the organization. They go to work primarily to take care of their family. And by doing the work of the organization, by helping the organization fulfill its mission, it helps them take care of their families. And we would all do so much better to remember that when we have those difficult moments in life and leadership, that we need to take our minds back to the commitments that we made. So for me, there are 5 commitments that are super important. 5 commitments that are super important to helping me navigate the difficulties of life. As a person of faith, I believe that everyone is born with a God-given purpose. And as you walk that purpose out, as you live that purpose out, you will see a much greater impact on the world and a much deeper sense of fulfillment in your personal life. So I made a commitment to my faith several years ago that no matter what happened in my life, up or down, left or right, that I would not give up on my faith. The second commitment that's really important to me is a commitment to my wife. I made a commitment to my wife that I would take care of her for the rest of our lives. Commitments 3 and 4 are to my 2 daughters. When they were born, I whispered in each of their ears that I would be there to take care of them. And then commitment number 5 is to myself. I promised myself that no matter what, no matter how difficult life became, that I would not give up on this idea of doing the very best with all the things that have been given to me. Now, when life gets difficult, you are often tempted to give up on your commitments. One of the stories that I often tell whenever I speak is the story of how this book, Leading While Green, came to be. Leading While Green was first published in 2015, and it was a long time coming. I had this distinct impression that I needed to share my notes of what it meant to be a young pastor, a young leader on the journey to discover what it meant to be an effective leader. And these notes were coalescing into a book. This book was also pulling together those 5 commitments that I mentioned earlier. And then there was a spot where I stopped writing the book. I'd given up on the idea. I was wrestling with all the questions about who would read it and who would actually care that I wrote something. So I stopped the project altogether. And at the time, I'm pastoring a couple of churches. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. And in so many areas, we were struggling. The stress of the pastorate was pulling on our marriage. Financially, we were strapped. I was running from one city to another, trying to uphold my responsibilities. And it was not a great place for us. In the middle of everything everything that had been going on, I still received that distinct impression, that sense of calling, that sense of purpose, that tug on my faith that I needed to finish that book project. And I kept putting it off and off and off and off and off. And I remember one day just feeling bad. I went to the kitchen to grab a snack and there was no food there. We're talking about 2015, so not too long ago. As I'm staring into an empty refrigerator and a tear streams down my face and I'm frustrated. I'm thinking I committed to the work of being a pastor and a spiritual leader and taking care of people on their spiritual journey. But now I'm in a space where I can't even take care of my family. What am I supposed to do? And I felt that distinct impression one more time to finish the book project. I humbled myself, put my ego to the side, asked my dad for some help. And then I went on to finish about a month later this book project. Now remember, in the midst of this, I'm still working as a pastor and I have to guard my time and balance my responsibilities. And there were times when during the writing process, I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. Even the experience of being rocked to the core by the empty refrigerator wasn't enough to keep me in the place where I kept going with the project. But do you know what did keep me going? My 5 commitments. It was my commitment to those 5 areas, my faith, my wife, my 2 daughters, and myself, that kept me on that writing journey. As soon as the book project was finished, opportunities to share my story and my journey and my take on leadership seemed to appear out of nowhere. The crazy thing is that ever since 2015, ever since I published that first book, ever since I completed that project, my life has been radically different. I've shared with you on this channel before, traveled across the country talking about life and leadership and having a voice to speak to people who struggle, who get frustrated, who are hurt, who are difficult to be around sometimes and still have to serve as leaders. I speak to their mind and I speak to their hearts and I remind them not to quit just because they're scared. So even in the radical shift that we're experiencing in this country right now, some of us have never experienced anything like this. The loss of jobs, the loss of a sense of security, the loss of a sense of identity, the loss of our normal, and then this presentation of a next normal. After all of that, there's the temptation to give up. There's the temptation not to keep moving forward. There's a temptation to walk away from that impression or that nudge or that sense of calling or purpose. You know, the thing that's been on your heart and mind to do for the longest time, but you're letting everything that's coming across the major headlines convince you that this is not the right time to do it. Leave it alone, let it go, walk away. Even some of the people who are closest to us, well-intentioned as they might be, are trying to convince us to give up on our commitments. But I want to challenge you to not give up on the things that you committed to. I want to challenge you not to give up on your faith. That sense of calling, that sense of purpose, don't give up on it. I want to challenge you not to give up on your family. I want to challenge you not to give up on your relationships. I want to challenge you not to give up on your team or your organization. I want to challenge you not to give up on yourself. And when the days are dark, when the resources are thin, when the weight feels so heavy, when you can't help but cry, when you sit alone and take deep breaths before you go into the next meeting or before you enter into the next conversation, when it feels like you are at your breaking point, remember your commitments. Remember the things that you promised to take care of. Remember the people who are depending on you. Remember your faith and remember the promise that you made to yourself to make a greater difference in the world, to be everything that you were called to be, and to not give up and to not quit just because you're scared. Now, the world is going to send you a message nearly every single day that it's time for you to give up. And when that happens, remember what you committed to and let the strength from those commitments help you to activate the courage that you need to keep going and to remind you not to quit just because you get scared.